Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Watching the World.
We share the love, embracing the differences like hand in glove. Spreading peace and joy, it's a beautiful sight. Together we shine in each other's light. And now do we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just left New York City and now back upstate. And believe it or not, you can hardly breathe with all of the smoke in the air. Everybody's saying, well, basically, about 3 or 4 years ago, we had the same issue with the heavy smoke. In fact, sometimes you look at the sky, it appeared to be red. Well, they say the smoke is coming out of Canada, but believe you me, it's burning hot outside. And everywhere you go, it smells like smoke. Depending on where you live, a lot of people are having the smoke smell with inside of the home. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the like button, share, subscribe. Thank you very much. Stella says like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications to be notified for upcoming shows. We typically have this show every day at noon Eastern Standard Time. News at noon, but today we're having it at 5 o'clock because I had a big meeting in New York City today. Shout out to you, OG Kicks. Let's find out about all of this smoke that's happening here in New York and also the upper East Coast and in that region. Let's check it out. Thank you, guys. Hit the like button, share, subscribe.
In addition to the heat, you might have smelled smoke or noticed a thick haze outside. Canadian wildfire smoke, making things worse outdoors and causing air quality concerns. News 4's Checky Beckford is reporting in Hoboken with more on that. Checky?
Hey, Dave. Well, we're not really smelling smoke right now, but if you do, it could be from those wildfires, the wildfire outbreak in northern Minnesota near the Canadian border and in Ontario. And you may be able to see it behind me. I'm not sure how well the camera is picking it up, but kind of that hazy backdrop we have here over the Hudson as we look towards lower Manhattan. Chopper 4 was over the scene earlier today, and it got a better view of that hazy look. Take a look at that.
You know, the president of the United States is not a big fan of global warming. If you believe in global warming, put a 1 in the chat. Again, thank you. Hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Put a 1 in the chat if you believe in global warming.
The hazy view as it looked towards the Manhattan skyline. Now, you may remember a similar phenomenon back in 2023 when smoke from Canadian wildfires alternately turned skies orange and darkened.
Now, that's what I was talking about back in 2023. You could actually see from these photos, it looks sort of red in the sky, especially certain parts of the day, high noon. And this is what we're dealing with. You go outside, your clothes are smelling like smoke. It's smoke everywhere.
In some instances. And this isn't the worst of it, we're told. While it shouldn't impact air quality much today, the National Weather Service says we should expect to see more smoke tomorrow and Thursday. This time, the smoke being blamed on nearly 24 wildfires in northern Minnesota and Ontario. It's so dangerous, the Forest Service is closing some areas to visitors in Minnesota.
Now, I'm about a 7-hour drive from this location. Can you imagine that? A 7-hour drive. That's like it's smoking here. And the smoke goes all the way back to Virginia where I was born. Can you imagine that? What is going on? How in the world are we experiencing this smoke thick? When I tell you it's thick, folks, all the way from a 7-hour drive. That's crazy.
And according to Canadian Broadcasting, several communities in northwestern Ontario have been ordered to evacuate due to the wildfire threat. The smoke, a real concern for air quality and those with respiratory issues.
You're going to smell that smoke, and it smells like camp smoke, essentially. And so it's going to be out there. And the more intense it is.
That's what it smells like. If I go outside right now, it smells like somebody's camping away, right? And you can barely see. I mean, your vision is... I was just down by New York City. I'll put out the photos. but you can't even really see the buildings and so forth that you typically could see. It's like a very cloudy day.
The more particulates are in the air. And the problem with that is once we start breathing it in, it's an irritant. And so not only is it going to irritate our lungs, our throat, the back of our mouth, it's going to irritate our eyes, our nasal passages, pretty much everything.
I can imagine urgent care by tomorrow is going to be the busy bee, right?
And Dr. Torres says you should be most wary of the time of day when you can see and smell the smoke the most. And even those without respiratory issues should be mindful as well. It's not the time, he says, to go out and do a long run where you're constantly inhaling the smoke. Even if you aren't sensitive to it, you could be affected by it. We're live in Hoboken. Checky Beckford.
Okay, so also have some breaking news for you guys. Today, Stella, one of our great moderators, reached out to me to tell me about the new bill to make daylight savings time permanent. Can you believe that? I kind of look forward to daylight savings time, right? What's going on? Let's check it out.
The days of springing forward and falling back may be
Thank you, Stella.
numbered. The House has voted to make daylight saving time permanent.
What?
Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
The bill would end the twice-a-year clock change requirement and give way to the later sunsets.
I wonder who came up with this bright idea. If you're in agreement with this new strategy, put a 5 in the chat. If no, put a 6. Let's see what you guys think about this.
We see from March to November.
Let's stop asking Americans to reset their clocks every March and November. Let's provide some certainty and consistency and a little more sunshine at the end of the day.
The bill has been a priority for President Trump.
I assume people would like to have more light later, but some people want to have more light earlier because they don't want to take their kids to school in the dark.
Congress made daylight saving time permanent during the 1970s energy crisis, but reversed course after parents revolted over children walking to school in pitch-dark winter mornings. In Florida alone, 8 kids were killed in traffic accidents.
If we're going to make a permanent change that affects every American, we should follow the science, learn from history, and prioritize Americans' health, particularly that of our children.
Permanent daylight saving time would mean the sun wouldn't rise until 8:52 a.m. in Seattle in mid-January and 9:04 a.m. in Indianapolis. But this new bill would allow states to opt out and make their own decisions. The bill now heads to the Senate,
Well, that's a first.
where its fate is uncertain.
Okay, shout out to you, Sharice. Nice to have you here as well. So there you have it, folks. That's the breaking news. You won't have to roll your clock backwards or forward. Now we're going to get into Iran. We're going to close out the show today with the press conference in regards to Nolan Wells. So that's going to be really good to help us to get an update as to the new information in regards to this overwhelming case that everybody wants to know what happened to Nolan. But not only that, there's some other individuals that are missing too. We're going to get to a few other people that have fallen from the face of the earth, so to speak. So let's get to Iran to see what's happening. The president speaks out. The Iranian president speaks out. We want to hear what's being said.
As we awake this morning, the conflict with Iran ramping back up.
And Patriot, please don't come back. Thank you.
At the moment, U.S. Central Command revealing another wave of strikes against Iran. This time during daylight hours. That's significant. That's the first time that's happened since the conflict started in late February. Most hits have happened at night, if not all of them. This after a 4th straight night of crushing blows as we say hello from New York. Back in New York City today, I'm Bill Hemmer. Welcome to our coverage. We get underway. Dana, good morning.
Good morning. I'm Dana.
Remember yesterday we said that last night would be a terrible night for Iran, and exactly that's what happened.
And this is America's Newsrooms. Those images are quite stunning, and we're going to have great guests to explain to you what's happening. Because U.S. forces, they are stepping up the pace of the strikes aimed at reducing Iran's military capabilities and especially its aggression against commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz.
So meanwhile, you have the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports now back in effect, looking to choke off the regime's oil supplies, the lifeblood of its economy. Now you have reports emerging the campaign against Tehran is expanding. President Trump telling Fox News and Trey Yinks that Iran will feel the pain.
We have seen extensive U.S. strikes against Iran for 3 consecutive nights now. This comes after the Iranians attacked vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. How would you describe what is happening at this moment? Has the war resumed?
Well, I guess you could define it any way you want, but certainly we're beating them up really badly. They have to be beat up. We're hitting them very, very hard. We're hitting every single...
There is official news that the president notified Congress that we are officially at war with Iran, although it appears the president did not really answer the question in this particular setting yet.
Single thing that they have along the shore, along the waterfront.
Will these strikes continue?
They'll continue until I say it's enough.
And we have a Fox team coverage. Peter Doocy at the White House and Mike Tobin is live in Tel Aviv, and that's where we begin. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Dana. Another round of U.S. strikes is underway as the blockade is now in effect. U.S. aircraft were at it again in Iran overnight, striking targets, and strikes resumed this morning. CENTCOM says the targets
Guys, hit the like button, share, subscribe. Thank you very much.
Our Iranian missile and drone sites, naval capabilities, and coastal defense sites. And this follows 7 commercial ships that have been struck crossing the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper gave a number.
Are there any people in the audience that feel like the president needs to get this over? Some people say he should just wipe Iran out. Do we have any people that think like that? If so, put a 1 in the chat. If no, put a 2.
Heard yet. Nearly a dozen civilian crew members killed, missing, or injured by the Iranian strikes. And he added, U.S. forces are holding Iran accountable for unwarranted aggression that continues to endanger innocent lives. 137 days into this conflict, the president says Iran has been beaten up badly and leaders can be pressured into making
Shout out to Claire. Shout out to Phil. Great to see you guys. Thank you so much.
A deal, but the dialogue out of Iran is all defiant.
They continue this language, but have they reached their goals on the ground? The people who wanted to run Iran into pieces, what have they reached? We respond in action and...
So this is the president of Iran. Pay attention closely to what he has to say.
Protect what we believe in every inch of our soul. The language they are using is worthy of themselves, not us.
These guys are not backing down. I think by now, a lot of us felt like there would be some dramatic progress, but it seems like we're going backwards with Iran, right?
And we have video of an Iranian Shahed drone striking a warehouse in Kuwait. Now, Iran has insisted they're not firing at their neighbors, but firing at U.S. targets in those countries. But Bahrainian air defenses went into effect this morning as they took fire. Also, a drone came down in Iraq. No reports of injuries. Dana, back to you.
Thank you, Mike Tobin in Tel Aviv.
So back in Washington now, President Trump said to be holding a Situation Room meeting on Iran yesterday afternoon. Peter Doocy from the White House picks up the coverage from there. Peter, what do we know?
We know that it is the Iranians who must now decide to negotiate because President Trump has decided not to.
Well, now I don't want to negotiate now. I said, let's not negotiate. 3 days ago, we had a deal.
And now the New York Times describes that deal as a memorandum of misunderstanding as President Trump plots ways to pressure the Iranians back into compliance. That is why he and the vice president and the war secretary and the...
What are the chances of being able to pressure Iran back into compliance? What do you guys really think about that?
CIA director are in the Situation Room yesterday, according to Axios. The sources said the meeting focused on new plans for devastating strikes on strategic targets in Iran, in addition to the strikes against Iranian targets in the Strait of Hormuz. The White House declined to comment.
Okay, guys, M. Wallen says, I never thought they would back down. They are built with all is nothing mentality, all or nothing mentality. Thank you very much for that.
House Democrats now claim the war isn't ending because the exit strategy isn't clear.
This administration has never said with real certainty why they started bombing Iran in the first place, and they're also not saying what their goal is and what it's going to take to get out, because they don't know how they're going to get out. They just want to continue deploying.
So listen, this is one of the leaders, right, asking questions. We're far deep into this whole deployment and war, whatever you want to call it. And this is what the leaders have to say.
All of our resources, because they have an industry to uphold. And I think that it's horrible. And I think we need to be holding them accountable for that.
A little over 3 hours ago, the United States military started striking targets in Iran. They were hitting
Phil says, what are the other options for real? Great question, Phil. Thank you.
equipment that's been used to target commercial vessels in the Strait. We expect to hear more from that about that from the president himself when he pops up this afternoon at the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle, PA.
Okay, all right, we'll be watching for that. Thank you, Peter. Nice to see you from the North Lawn there. A lot of news in that Trey Yingst interview, I think.
There he is, and there's a little bit more, too, because the president was talking about how will Iran possibly get back to the table. Listen here.
Seen this week against Iran will expand. Are you considering hitting energy targets or other locations inside of Iran?
I'll save the energy targets for last, but ultimately we'll hit energy targets, yeah. Next week it gets really bad for them because next week comes the power plants, next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants, we're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate.
So that pressure coming to try.
You know what's interesting? When I was in Turkey a little over a month ago, and I had a chance to speak to a lot of people that were actually from Iran, many of these people said that the Iranian people really love Donald Trump because they see him as a way of having freedom from a regime that's really tough and wipes out people where they stand right in the middle of the street. So I found that to be quite interesting. I even had a chance to record some of these individuals. I'm going to put it on the channel. And thank you guys. Hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Now we're going to move on again and look at this whole movement last night from a different angle.
All right, beginning in the Middle East, U.S. forces conducting a fourth night of crushing strikes against Iran.
And President Trump says next week will be even worse if Tehran doesn't come to the table soon.
Mike Tobin joins us live. He's in Tel Aviv, and he's got the latest. Mike?
Good morning, Joey. Good morning, gang. The U.S. blockade is now in place. And President Trump says what that means is that the Strait is open with the exception of any ship that visits an Iranian port. What we've seen from both Iran and the U.S. now is an increase in strikes. U.S. Central Command says they've wrapped up another round of strikes inside.
Do you guys feel like the U.S. should control the Strait of Hormuz and also perhaps put in a tolling system to make more money? How do you feel about that? Tell us in the comment section.
Of Iran, the targets have been Iranian missile and drone sites, naval capabilities, and coastal defense sites. And this follows 7 commercial ships that have been struck crossing the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper gave a number we haven't heard yet. Nearly a dozen civilian crew members killed, missing, or injured by the Iranian strikes. And he added, U.S. forces are holding Iran accountable for unwarranted aggression that continues to endanger innocent lives. 137 days into this conflict, with the Trump reportedly holding meetings in the Situation Room about expanding the U.S. offensive in Iran, the president told our Trey Yingst Kharg Island is still a possibility.
Okay, so we understand that. We're going to have to move on for the sake of time. Now we're going to take a look at Capitol Hill and how basically it erupts. Let's check this out as well.
On Capitol Hill, the confirmation hearing underway for the acting attorney general, Todd Blanche. Meanwhile, anger and outrage on the Hill as dozens of lawmakers learned former special counsel Jack Smith was secretly reading the content of their personal text messages. Dozens of lawmakers now. While investigating President Trump 2022, 2023, Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Chuck Grassley announcing plans to drag Smith back before the committee for a public hearing, accusing him of running roughshod over the institution.
Smith's operation cut corners and blew through constitutional stop signs instead of respecting them and having been advised about the constitutional problems. The White House messages obtained and reviewed by Smith's team included communications with many senators and representatives. The communications included messages with members on this committee, including this senator. It also included other information irrelevant to Jack Smith's case against then citizen Trump. Instead of that information being walled off, it was intentionally shared.
All right, now congressional correspondent Bill Malou.
All right, guys. Greg says, I'm tired of the negotiations crap, knowing they won't abide by the agreement. Thank you very much, Greg.
A lot to track today. Let's start with this, Bill. Good morning there.
Bill, good morning to you. As you mentioned, we are learning today that more than 40 members of Congress had their text messages scooped up, collected, and read by former special counsel Jack Smith during his
I wonder how they feel about that, right?
probe of President Trump. And as you can imagine, these lawmakers are not happy about it. Most of them were Republican, but even a few Democrats were caught up in this. So these revelations are coming to us after Senator Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary.
Guys, Gary says Trump is a homicidal maniac, and now we all share the mark. Every American is guilty of the M word. Okay.
Committee released these records yesterday, which he says were turned over to his committee by the Department of Justice. Now, those records reveal that 44 lawmakers had their text messages with Trump administration officials in the final weeks of his first presidency collected and read during Jack Smith's probe. And Republicans who are on that list are outraged.
Well, first off, it's outrageous. It's disgusting. It just shows you exactly what the Biden administration was.
I mean, I'm pretty irritated. I was irritated when I knew they were reading the text messages of members. I'm not a lot happier now that I know that it's me.
And some Republicans are now accusing Jack Smith of lying under oath. This is after he said repeatedly during a December deposition with Congress last year that his probe didn't collect text messages.
Well, he's definitely in the hot seat. They'll be cooking him.
The toll records that you requested from the senators, did they include the content of the phone calls? No. Did the records that you requested, the toll records from the members of Congress, include the content of text messages? No.
Well, Senator Rand Paul, who had his text
Well, that looked like a very uncomfortable question he was being asked, right?
collected, reacted on X, saying in part, quote, December 2025, Jack Smith swore under oath that he didn't spy on text messages belonging to members of Congress. Today, new evidence confirms he spied on dozens of members of
Hello, Freedom.
Congress, myself included. This is a blatant abuse of power and exactly what our founders warned about. Senator Josh Hawley, who was also on the list, adds, quote, looks like perjury. And back out here live, Bill, two names you wouldn't expect to see on the list who had their text messages collected as well. New Jersey Democratic Senator Cory Booker and former Democratic Congresswoman Karen Bass, who is now the mayor of Los Angeles. We'll send it back to you.
Nearly bipartisan. Bill, thanks. Nice to see you. Bill Malugin on the Hill. Dana's got more.
More on this with Fox News legal analyst Carrie Urbon. Carrie, so good to see you. What do you think of all of this, and do you think Jack Smith lied?
So I think it's an abuse of prosecutorial power for sure. You know, best case, it was sloppiness. Worst case, it was intentional. And
Hello, Eric. Good to see you. Put a 1 in the chat if you think Jack Smith lied. Put a 2 if you think no. Let's see what you guys think.
as Chuck Grassley, I thought very aptly said, they just trampled through and steamrolled constitutional protections of sitting members of Congress. You know, look, we have to remember what this is about as far as these text messages are concerned. As part of the Jack Smith probes, they were looking at text messages of White House officials, a lot of them. And when they were looking at those, there were a number of text messages between those officials and members of Congress, which is normal, right? This happens all the time when they're talking about legislation, investigations, and the like. But what it appears that Smith's team didn't do was properly filter out those text messages. So when they received these messages in the first place, which they did lawfully acquire, what they needed to do was take a look and say, okay, wait, we gotta wall those ones off because those are constitutionally protected and they're not relevant to our criminal probes. It appears they didn't do that. In fact, within an hour of receiving these text messages from the archives, they went and downloaded them all and read them. And so these members of Congress have every reason to be very angry. Now, Dana, in answer to your second question about perjury, you know, it really depends on the questions that Jack Smith was asked. I went back and looked myself this morning, and it looks like he was specifically asked about the calls and messages that they themselves requested. So if you recall, there was a lot of anger on Capitol Hill, rightfully so, I would argue, when it turned out that they had subpoenaed phone companies for the toll records of a number of members of Congress and didn't let those members of Congress know. So Smith was asked under oath about those calls that they requested, they subpoenaed. He was not asked, to my knowledge, did you ever review text messages of Congress for any reason? Because if you recall, these text messages were part of the messages that they were reviewing on these White House's official phones. So he would have known, right? But he was slippery and could have said no.
So it depends what the meaning of the word is. So
Correct.
That's what sounds
Well, I'm pretty sure they're going to hold him accountable for being slippery. What say you?
like Carrie. Carrie, I can make this request, but you don't have to grant it to me. There's someone on the other side who said yes. Who is that?
Well, it was the archives, and these are on government phones, so the archives
Thank you, Ray.
are supposed to release things that are on government phones, right? And that's what Jack Smith's team did. They asked for these messages from the White House officials. Now, I've always thought that Smith's probe way overdid it. They were looking at messages of Mike Pence, Ivanka Trump, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, many, many White House officials, in their quest to, I suppose, prove that there was some, large conspiracy to overthrow the government, so to speak.
All right. Greg says that Obama did the same thing to Trump.
January 6th, which on its face I think is ridiculous. And so in doing that, they, requested records of members of Congress, of those toll records. Now we know that they were reading text messages that they were not supposed to be reading between White House officials and members.
Yeah.
And look, I think serious constitutional questions and concerns. And I'm glad, that 92-year-old Chuck Grassley, got to give him credit that he's
Roberto says, show the Epstein files, Trump. All right.
putting this out and continuing to expose what happened.
And Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, is having a confirmation hearing today. One of the topics that the Democrats decided to bring up, and we knew they would, was about Jeffrey Epstein. Watch here.
Remember, for 4 years, there wasn't a peep about Jeffrey Epstein. The Biden administration did nothing to be transparent about the Epstein case. When it comes to the victims of this horrible man, we will never not talk to victims. We will never not do everything we can to.
I just want to mention that Todd Blanche here, the acting attorney general, when I attended Donald Trump's trial here in New York, the state trial where he received 34 felonies, Todd Blanche was actually his lead attorney on that case. All right.
Prosecute
I actually had a chance to meet him and his team.
Anybody that committed any crimes against any of these women. There are no closed investigations. If we learn today, if we learn next week, if we learn next month that there's an individual that we can investigate, indict, and prosecute out of the Epstein files, you better believe it, we will.
And this is
All right, so I'd like to hear from you guys. Do you think anyone is going to be held accountable for the Epstein files? Do you think we're going to actually see all of the files? Put a 1 in the chat if you're hopeful for that. Put a 2 if you think it's just a pipe dream. So 3 if you don't care. Let's see how you guys feel about it.
an issue that continues to bubble up, and the public has not forgotten about it. It's probably one of the reasons it got brought up again today, Carrie.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on this topic. I don't have enough time to get into all of them, but I would say this. I think that Todd Blanche should be given a lot of credit for putting those files out. It was a ton of work. They put those, and if you recall the amount of how fast they did that, Todd Blanche, I would say, has been pushing transparency from the beginning on fraud, on what the Southern Poverty Law Center was up to, on what the Biden administration was up to with respect to parents who were angry at school boards, on people who were pro-life and unfairly targeted by the Biden administration, and now Epstein. And look, at the end of the day, and this is a hard truth, I think, for people to swallow, but it is that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. He died in prison.
You'd be surprised how many people believe that Jeffrey Epstein is still alive, right? You'd be shocked.
Now, people were very disappointed, understandably so, that he was not brought to justice in the legal system before his death. And SDNY had been building a very strong case against him. I was at DOJ when Epstein was found dead in his cell, so I remember this very clearly. But, also dying in a prison cell, whether, one kills themselves or you want to believe that he was murdered, I think is a pretty, there's something righteous about that in some ways for those victims. Secondly, I would say this, the statute of limitations with respect to sexual crimes, especially if you're a minor, whether it's in New York or in Florida, there really isn't any. So these victims, if they have cases to bring against people who they say were part of Epstein's circle, they can still do that. They can go to the police departments, they can file reports, they can contact their local.
Okay, so we at least have one person here today that feels that Epstein is still alive. If you feel that he is alive, tell us. We want to know how many people feel that way. Thank you, guys. We're going to move on. There's a Fort Bragg soldier that has gone missing. We want to shed some light on the situation. Let's check it out.
Active duty Fort Bragg soldier remains missing at this hour. His family says every hour without answers just feels unbearable. Army Specialist Savion Anderson is housed now, has been missing since June the 29th. He never showed up to formation at Fort Bragg that day. His
A lot of people going missing. What's happening?
mother says that he was also struggling with his mental health and now struggling to be able to find his way outside the military. She says just days before his disappearance, Anderson told her that his wife wanted a divorce. Days earlier, court records show the 25-year-old was arrested at a Fayetteville hotel for trespassing after officers say he refused to leave a room after.
They're trying to tell you in so many words what could have happened. Just going back for a second, Susan says, I believe he's still alive, talking about Epstein. He is a puppet with a lot of information, more info if dead. So yes, he's alive. Okay. All right. Very good. And also Alexander says, why didn't the Biden administration broad release these files? Okay. So that's a good question that everybody asks in regards to the Epstein files.
His credit card declined the charge for an extra night.
And I'm just hoping and praying that my son was just scared.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Just scared that he needed a break.
Spokesperson with the 3rd Corps Sustainment Command at Fort Bragg says in a statement the Army is now working with local law enforcement and the Department of the Army Criminal Investigation Division to locate Specialist Anderson and ensure his safe return.
Okay, so they covered it as though he was going through some troubling times. We still want to shed light on the situation. Now we have quite a few individuals. Remember all the fraud in Minnesota that was happening? Well, we get to find out some of the verdicts in this case. Remember, Nick Shirley actually went out there to cover some of these cases. Let's check it out.
Who received the most taxpayer money from daycare reimbursements in Minnesota last year just pleaded guilty to fraud. Thanks for joining us at 5 on air and streaming live. I'm Rena Sargentopoulos.
And I'm Kevin Holmes. Fahima Mahamud is the first defendant in the state's massive daycare fraud scheme, admitted to scamming 2 federal programs.
And she'll now have to pay millions of dollars back. Our Lou Goose was in the courtroom today. Here now with our top story. Lou?
Rena and Kevin, Fahima Mahamud seemed...
You know, what's amazing? These individuals are getting millions of dollars, right? You're going to see in the next case that I show, these people receive millions, right? And notice the makeup of the individuals.
reluctant in the courtroom to enter the guilty plea because she didn't want that to mean that her entire operation was a fraud. 5 months after she shut down her daycare, booked a flight to London, and was arrested by the FBI.
Ms. Mahamud, are you here to plead guilty today?
50-year-old Fahima Mahamud admits she committed daycare fraud. Running Future Leaders Early Learning Center on 36th and Chicago Avenue in Minneapolis since 2015, Mahamud collected the most child care assistance programs.
Oh, yeah. Remember, what did they call it? Like the Leering Center and some of these daycares. In many cases, they came back and said, oh, no, we actually have children at these daycares. Well, apparently there was some serious fraud happening.
Program or CCAP money in the state last year at $3.7 million. In federal court while entering her plea, Mahamud and her attorney specified that there were children attending her daycare and that she has receipts. But the government didn't accuse her of inflating attendance at her center during the swift investigation that followed the attention in Minnesota placed on daycare fraud. Instead, the FBI learned from families that Mahamud did not charge.
All right, she was covered up. You couldn't make out what she looked like, so they show us her face. All right.
Them the required copay to receive CCAP money, which provided incentive for more families to sign up. By pleading guilty to conspiracy to defraud the United States, Mahamud admits receiving
$4.63 million. How did she receive so much? Ozzy says the Joe Biden administration was the worst president of all time. All right. Thank you for your comment, Ozzy.
$1 million in taxpayer money with that scheme.
Ms. Mahamud, any comment? Are you going to be able to pay back any of the money?
That's not all. Mahamud also admits taking part in the Feeding Our Future meal fraud scheme, claiming to serve up to 60,000 meals per month to needy kids out of her daycare, fraudulently collecting another $850,000.
She was feeding 60,000 meals a month, but they didn't see too many kids walking through. They must have been ghosts, right?
And court papers say she diverted much of those taxpayer funds to buy real estate and go toward her other companies, like this autism center, which has generated another $3.1 million in taxpayer reimbursements over the last 5 years. What the government will seize when Mahmoud is sentenced has not yet been determined.
Okay, Ronald says that Biden was the worst president too. Okay, Phil says this fraud is happening way more than they want us to know. The question is, though, how are these people collecting so much money? And then you see people who really need some help and they can't even get a few shekels. What's happening, right?
Sentencing will be slightly complicated because the judge can go as low as 2 years in prison or close to 7 years in prison if she puts the daycare fraud and the meal program fraud terms back to back. Rena.
Now, Lou, they used a different kind of prosecution. This went a little bit faster. Will we see something like that in the future?
This was a faster investigation because they didn't have to do all the surveillance to see if she was overcounting or inflating her numbers of her attendance. She wasn't making the parents pay their share of the reimbursement in order to get more of them to sign up. If there's other ones just like that, it's a quick way that they could charge more people daycare fraud.
Okay, the H2O says it's the dark money from the Democrats. Okay. All right. Immortal says corrupt politicians allow it. What's happening? We have another case of fraud we're going to look at too. Check this one out.
Tonight, a former daycare owner is waiting to learn her sentence after
Another daycare. What's with the daycare business?
pleading guilty in a fraud case, accused of defrauding the government out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Lou Ragoose is looking into her background and the unusual turns her path took.
The path to federal court has been quite unusual for Jill Mertens.
Ms. Mertens, anything you'd like to say about these fraud allegations?
The 43-year-old Hamel resident is an accomplished singer, an evangelist and worship pastor. And going back even
Oh, we have a pastor that was taking the money. Wow.
further, a pageant star. That's Mertens on stage with Tony Danza, competing in the 2000
She has quite the profile. Now she's adding something different.
2001 Miss America pageant after being crowned Miss North Dakota.
Jill, are you here to plead guilty today?
But it is Mertens' venture into the childcare industry that brought her to court. State records show that in 2016, Mertens began registering daycares. Creative Stars Academy Child Care and Learning Center in Casson, Minnesota, a second Creative Stars location in Rochester, and Tree of Life Academy in Ramsey, all three of which show a number of complaints and violations, during which time Mertens also was defrauding a taxpayer-funded program created to help pay teachers at child care centers like hers. Governor Walz signed the Great Start Compensation Support Payment Program into law in 2023. Starting
The Great Start. Can you imagine that?
in the next year, Mertens admits filing grant
Phil says, I'm thinking about starting a daycare. Who knew the government would give individuals millions of dollars in tax-funded money on the back end, right?
applications claiming 23 teachers who didn't actually work there and inflating the hours worked by another 11 employees.
Guys, H2O says it's blue states with blue cities. Can anybody debate that? Can anybody push back that it's more than just blue states, or is H2O correct?
A total theft of $426,000.
It's just very disheartening to see in the community that we have that someone would even consider doing this.
Joe McInerney and his wife put down a non-refundable deposit with Mertens last year to hold a spot for their unborn child.
I mean, everything looked like it was a smooth ship, so to speak.
And they didn't realize Mertens then filed for bankruptcy and transferred ownership of the Casson daycare last fall before the federal investigation took place.
Did you guys have any idea she was committing fraud?
We had no idea she was committing any fraud. We didn't have any idea that the daycare was in any sort of financial hardship. Hopefully she has some time to think about what she did and pay back her debts.
Jill Mertens and her attorney declined to comment after the guilty plea. The sentencing guidelines call for about 2 years in prison, but the
All right, Dave Hutchison says greed and theft by a sham daycare. Thank you very much. Ozzy says Democrats sleeping while the current administration is fighting to keep our country alive. Thank
judge will have a lot of discretion. All of her daycares, including the Casson one where the ownership was transferred, have now been closed down. Jennifer.
Lou, do you have any idea on a sentencing date yet?
Nope, that hasn't been set yet. First, they do like a probation look.
Kathleen says this is sickening. Okay. And also H2O says, Mel, I want to be in no state and no city. Shout out to you. Greg says every blue city is involved with fraudulent activities. Pure garbage. Okay.
At her past, she doesn't have any criminal history or anything like that. One part of her plea agreement that was interesting to note is that they said that she will have immunity.
Guys, hit the like button, share, subscribe to the channel. We're going to get to Nolan, the press conference in regards to Nolan Wells next.
With any other federal investigations that may or may not be going on.
Okay, so a lot of this stemmed from Nick Shirley, who I've met in person here in New York. I was actually there when he was punched in the head by some of the Africans when he was shedding light on what was happening down on Canal Street. So anyway, let's move on. Let's cover what's happening with the latest update in regards to Nolan Wells. Put a 1 in the chat if you think this case is nefarious, okay? If it's nefarious, put a 2 if you think it just requires more information, which will show that nothing nefarious happened. So 1 or 2. 3 if you're not even familiar with the case, and if you're not, you will be now if you check out this press conference. Let's check it out.
Good morning. I'm attorney Ben Crump, along with attorney Lisa Park, attorney Eric Harris, Justin Preston, and Cliff Jones. We have the honor of representing the family of Nolan Wells. We have present with us his mother and father, Christine and Elmore.
Okay, so Dave is not familiar with the case, or Country Carpenter is not familiar with the case. So let me give you a little context in regards to this. Okay, this is Ben Crump. He's the attorney standing on the mic, standing by the microphone right now. To the right of him, you see the mother and father of Nolan Wells. On the 4th of July, he went out. Nolan Wells is a black fella. He went out with all white friends, and the three that are the subject of this story, they were with him. He ended up somehow drowning, and I believe the friends didn't really offer a lot of information as to what happened. I guess they claim they do not know what happened to him. So pretty much the country, for the most part, a lot of people are quite concerned as to what happened to Nolan Wells. And was there something nefarious happening? Did someone, take his life? Was he abandoned? All of a sudden, someone produced his cell phone and also his keys. And the mother had to actually go out and seek it. It wasn't like she got a call from one of the guys and said, hey, listen, I have your son's information. There was a delay in any contact to the police of any sort. They found him actually, I believe, 2 days later. He was pretty much lying on his face, in the water. So there's so many questions when it comes to this case, and people think that they're making it pretty synonymous to Emmett Till. That's the mood that you get when you look at this case from a higher level when you go to Facebook, Instagram, and all of these places. And it's, as Kathleen says, it seems fishy. And already in the comments, you see a lot of people pushing back. So that gives you the idea of what's happening with this case. A lot of people feel like it has something to do with race. Very similar to Carmelo Anthony. People feel like this is an injustice. On one side, you have people pointing fingers saying, listen, there's nothing here. People are blowing this out of proportion, making up lies. On the other side, you say, listen, there's a lot of questions here, and what's the problem? And obviously, when you see Ben Crump on the case, you know that it's something that focuses on civil rights, and rightfully so, based on some of the information that's coming out. So let's check it out together here, and hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
We've just had an opportunity to meet with District Attorney Angel McElgrath and some members of her team. We had a very respectful meeting. The thing I assume some of you may No, the thing to announce, she shared with the family that there will be a grand jury that she will turn this case over to once.
All right, so there's going to be a grand jury for this case. That's not a good indication, right? That points toward, that makes it more questionable, right? What's happening here?
They have collected all the information and finished their investigation. We also agreed that we will have a mutual inspection of the cell phone with our experts and their experts. Attorney Eric Hertz is helping lead the investigation team.
Guys, I'm with Mustaine. I'm waiting for the autopsy. There's 2 that are coming down the pipeline. H2O says, I see Ben Crump. I know there's a lot of money left on the floor somewhere. Oh my.
With former law enforcement experts who are going to help us with the cell phone download. So everybody will be able to see at the same time what the cell phone has.
So the family has not turned over the cell phone that was retrieved to law enforcement. And Ben Crump is actually explaining that they're, going to get the information. They're trying to make sure that nothing nefarious happened and they're keeping control of the situation. So when the local law enforcement ordered an autopsy, Ben Crump, along with the family, they ordered an independent one. And I believe Colin Kaepernick was the one that paid for it. And I think Tyler Perry is going to cover the funeral. All of this is going to be happening on Monday. I wanted to mention what Tammy had to say. Tammy says, no autopsy and everyone is an expert. And that's what we see online. That's I can understand your position.
We also talked about trying to make sure we dot every I and cross every T. I know that we're getting about 50 calls a day to 100 calls a day from people who were there on Horn Island, people who are familiar with individuals that were there on Horn Island. And so we continue to be steadfast in trying to get to the truth of why Nolan Wells is dead. At this time, we'll have Attorney Hertz say a few words.
I want to ask you guys a question before we get to Hertz, right? Keep this in mind. Most people that are in the chat probably has children or what have you. You get my drift, right? But your child goes out with 3 individuals and your child does not come back home. The 3 children, perhaps one of their parents is a judge. And so they've been instructed, to protect themselves. So they lawyer up and they do not provide information. How would that make you feel? Do you think it's fair? Whether it's legal or legit, I'm asking you, do you think it's fair? Answer in the comments. We have some intelligent people here. I would love to hear your position. Just on that little bit, you can see why the mother is quite concerned about what happened that night and not being able to get the right questions answered. You just receive a cell phone and its keys with conflicting stories. The boys did say, I guess, now this is what we heard through the grapevine, is that they said that he went with a girl. And then the girl, whoever this girl is, I don't want to state her name, but she said no, he went with the guys. What do you think about this? How would you deal with this if it happened in your life to your family member? All right, let's check it out. Let's get back to it here.
And then Christine and Elmore would just talk about the homegoing services and celebration for Nolan, and then we'll take a few of your questions. Attorney Eric Hertz. Thank you.
The family has received a lot of support. M. Wallen says, I saw that Byron Allen donated $100,000. I think they received over 600 and maybe 20,000 so far. So a lot of people have been given to the family to support them at this time.
Right now, there's a lot of unanswered questions. We appreciate the district attorney meeting with us, but because of certain types of confidentiality that even the victims are not allowed to know, We did not get all the answers we want. We have an independent investigation going on that involves former law enforcement, federal agents that are going to be looking into all the...
Okay, so the FBI is involved too, so we have some confirmation that the feds are involved. Tammy says, yes, it's fair. Only speak when you have counsel. Okay, thank you, Tammy. H2O says, families, get your child private one-on-one swimming lessons to make sure they are drown proof. Now, I have to push back H2O. I understand that this kid could swim quite well. The question is, though, and I think it comes up in one of these press conferences that perhaps there was some alcohol floating around. We want to know, did that have a factor? That's why the autopsy would be very prudent at this time. Jay Boff says, something ain't right. That's for sure. Thank you very much, guys. Take the time to subscribe. We typically have this show every day at noon. Today I had a big meeting, so I had to move it till 5. I try to make sure that when I'm around, I have this show. So keep in mind, but if I get enough support, I'll do this show at 5 o'clock every day too. Tammy says, no one is ever drown proof. Okay, drowning proof. M. Wallen says, family doing their best. M. Wallen, thank you for your continued support and all of your comments. I find it tremendous. Phil says, I would want the truth, but unfortunately, I know that it's not guaranteed from personal experience. Phil, you should come on and tell us something about your experience. Stella says, and it was confirmed that he knew how to swim. Thank you for that. Tammy says, Kathleen, another expert. Great. Okay, let's keep moving. Thank you, guys.
Different information we got. The calls are coming in and we're getting a lot of information. Some of the people that I spoke to are not talking with law enforcement here. We're going to be trying to get them to cooperate with each other because we want to make sure the narrative, which has been put out that is false, is going to be corrected. So at this point, we just ask everybody to keep calling in if you have any information and let us know. And I personally, if we validate you're a legitimate call, we'll call you and talk to you. And I thank you all for showing up today.
Okay, I want to thank all the people that are on X or Twitter that's tuning in. We have a great crowd from there. Thank you very much for all your support of Watching the World 777. John Stevenson makes a great point that I'm with you. Says, I hope it's not a case of negligent homicide from a stupid joke or something along those lines. Great critical thinking skills as always, John. Thank you very much. Ground and Sky says, please share and subscribe. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's get back to it.
And now, Christine and Elmore will just share with you some details of the homegoing celebration for their son.
Hello, everyone. So, the homegoing celebration, the funeral will be held at Centerpoint Church in Ocean Springs. It is going to be, visitation will be 9 to 11, and then the funeral will start after that. The plan is for the repast because, again, we want to celebrate Nolan. And he would not want us to be sitting around crying and eating. And so what we're going to do is kind of have a party to celebrate him, and that'll be held at the Jackson County Fairgrounds. So we really do want to keep it for family and friends. We are going to allow media to come in as well. And lastly, his
teammates.
Oh, absolutely, teammates. We've already contacted Coach Les George because we want to make sure that those guys are there. Former teammates from high school, middle school, teams that he played against. You guys are all welcome.
I'd like to know if the kids from that night that he was with, if many of them will attend the funeral on Monday.
But of course, we want to make sure that our families for sure and close friends get there. So I do want to just say, for those of you, again, if you are having protests, even the day of his service, I am asking you guys to just keep it peaceful. Nolan would never want any type of violence or anything like that. He was not that kind of person. So if you guys would, again, just be peaceful. And to the community, thank you so much. Just the outpouring of love, support. We've had some local officials, Mayor Casey Vaughn from Gaucher has reached out to us. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you. He has, it's almost been every day. He's been texting to check on us. Also, Jeffrey Hullum, thank you so much. He's been texting pretty much every day. Receiving a lot of stories from Nolan's teachers, which just warms my heart, his classmates, teammates. So again, for those of you who have donated to the GoFundMe, once again, I stress, if you are not financially able to, we're not begging for that money, okay? If you're not
So they have a GoFundMe if you would like to participate. She's just offering some instruction.
financially able to, we understand. We thank you for whatever you can give, but if you cannot, if you would, just keep us in your prayers. And to his friends, stay strong, and please just take care of your mental health, because I know this is a lot. It's a lot for us, and I know you guys are feeling some of that too. So thank you all.
That's right, Kathleen. This is really sad to say the least. We have Jeremy. Jeremy says, what will you maggot losers do with your miserable lives when Trump is gone? Okay, this is about Trump. Okay, H2O says that young man was going to the NFL. Okay, John says, what does presidential politics have to do with this young man? Thank you, John. M. Wallen says, people are jealous of their GoFundMe success. All right, let's get back to it. Now, before we get back to it, I just want to make this statement. You guys remember there was a photo that came out of Nolan being at a pool party, and people started to say, well, this is from that night. This happened. So in other words, they're saying, I think the last time anyone really saw him was around 3-something p.m. And so now with the pool party, I think it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. So now people started to say, well, he made it back to shore because he went to this pool party. Someone beat him really bad, and then they took him back to the island and left him there, killed him, or whatever happened, right? So I want you to keep that in mind. People are starting to try to do their own investigation and put everything together. And it kind of confuses things because sometimes it's not right, okay? So pay attention to what the attorney says now in connection to that pool party photo. The one that I said I didn't want to get behind until we actually get the metadata to know what it really stemmed from. That's right, Tammy. That pool party ended up being on June the 27th, not the night of question.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Attorney Crump, Skyler Henry here with CBS News. The last time that you spoke in a setting like this, I know you guys were hoping to get results back from an independent autopsy. I know you mentioned that Nolan had been sent to Washington, D.C. Is there anything to share on that front?
Not at this time, but we hope soon, very soon. Obviously, we're concentrating on the funeral services, but hopefully shortly thereafter, we will be able to tell some findings of the preliminary autopsy. Still waiting on some things. And also, while we're talking about funeral services, want to thank Mr. Tyler Perry for paying for the funeral. Absolutely. As well as Colin Kaepernick for helping to shoulder the expense of the independent autopsy. And I thank Reverend Al for agreeing to officiate the funeral services. Yes, sir.
Aaron Gilchrist with NBC News. Mr. and Mrs. Wansley, you said from the very beginning that for you, this was really about getting some answers about what happened to your son. Do you feel like after your meeting today, you have any more clarity on what happened?
Well, it was just a meeting where she talked about the process. She didn't tell us any information about the investigation too much because those things are, as she said, her role. and what she has to do, but they still have questions, and that's not insignificant to this meeting. It's just in general. Every morning they wake up and there's a hole in their heart, and they are trying to say, what happened to my son?
Wow, this is so sad. Thank you, Ground and Sky, for gifting a membership. Thank you.
Obviously, you know, they feel strongly that he would not have just stayed behind. He wouldn't have left his cell phone. And so we're trying to get to those answers.
Hello, Grateful Heart.
Attorney Crump, Brian
Empress, good to see you as always.
Rose, GC Wire. There's been a lot of misinformation that's been spread online, especially the pool picture that was shared by you, and you had said that...
Well, I didn't share it, I reposted it.
See that? They're asking him about that pool photo, right? Let's go back.
Phone. And so we're trying to get to those answers.
Attorney Crump, Brian Rose, GC Wire. There's been a lot of misinformation that's been spread online, especially the pool picture that was shared by you, and you had said that...
Well, I didn't share it, I reposted it. We're reposting everything. Let's make it clear. We're reposting everything because we're trying to get people to come in and call. And so we've said from the beginning, we're in a ferocious search for the truth. And so things out there, we are trying to post, ask people, do you know something about this? Let us know. Just because we repost does not mean that we authenticate anything. Look at our social media. We have always been very careful to say this is a repost, and we almost always give a declaration that that's what it is, a repost. And so...
So you notice that the reporter said there's a lot of misinformation going around about that pool photo. So this is what he's responding to.
We want people to continue to call about everything, videos, whatever interactions they saw. And thank God, we are getting dozens of people calling every day saying, I was on Horn Island. This is what I saw. I know these individuals. This is what we know. They said, we understand the sheriff's investigation has hundreds of people calling too.
No, the phone is still with the family. I think they just covered that. Has not been turned over to the authorities yet.
And so the hope is that when this is presented to the grand jury, all relevant witnesses and evidence will be presented to them so that we can have a fair and impartial investigation into the death of Nolan Wells. We were very honest and candid with the district attorney, and she was honest and candid with us.
He started off by saying that this is going to the grand jury, and good to see you, Sophie's World.
Our lived experiences tell us that we must question everything, everybody's role, law enforcement role. That is the lived experience of us as black people in America. And we would be not honoring the ancestors' sacrifices for us if we did not be honest every chance we got when we talk to power.
Yes, sir. You mentioned the false narrative out there.
So did you catch what he said? They're going to evaluate the police officers, everybody's part or role when it comes to Nolan's death. And they're starting this really early on in the case. Is there anyone that objects to this type of thorough investigation more from an independent angle? What do you guys think in regards to that? Typically, we don't have a chance to see this level of attention given to a case so early on, even before you get the official autopsy.
Well, I've seen quite a few of those, so I was wondering if you could tell us which false narrative you're talking about so we can let people know it's not true. Was there a particular false narrative you were
referring to? There's a lot of narratives out there right now, and
there's a lot of narratives we're going to try to investigate all.
There's a lot of narratives out there right now. I'm not going to comment on any particular one, but whenever a case this big gets in the news, people try, for whatever motivations, law enforcement or whoever, people that call in, try to set up a narrative so that people will follow the narrative. Our job is to cut through all the noise and find the truth. And the truth needs to be found by unbiased investigation as well as unbiased lawyers and all the people that are out here, all you investigatory journalists and everyone else. We just ask that you keep an open mind until we get to the truth.
This is quite the team. Phil says, Ben Crump is not my cup of tea, but he definitely knows what he's doing. Just Human says someone needs to investigate the independent investigators. All right. Ground and Sky says, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much for that. M. Wallen says, wouldn't be a need for Ben Crump if justice was truly blind. Great comment. Grateful Heart says, hello. Okay, thank you. All right. And Ground and Sky says, we want to know the truth.
And one of the things I will say, we are trying desperately to figure it out. And we don't profess to have all the answers, but boy, we're trying. And so when people call and tell us this is this person, and then we get somebody saying that, no, this isn't that person, we're trying to balance it all. So we want to even be more careful ourselves to make certain that we're trying to get people to come forward. And there are a lot of people who have different perspectives. We're getting that just from the phone calls, that people who were there at the same time are saying different things. But we're going to get there. We're going to get to the truth.
So first, I
yes.
just want to say my deepest condolences to you, Christine, and Elmore. My heart hurts. I'm praying you can heal WLOA spirit home. But I want to go on and ask you, Attorney Ben Crump, you say that you were talking about the process in there with the DA. Were any affidavits or possible prosecutions or criminal actions presented to her to be signed eventually, or do we know anything right now?
And as she says, her role is confidential at this point, but so she can maintain her prosecutorial independence. Obviously, I stressed to her very strenuously to say, we want you to zealously, you and the Sheriff's Department, to zealously investigate this matter, and Christine and Elmore share their life experiences too. We know through our lived experiences, our life experiences, that's, and she said that's not how our office operates, but we know in America, in the South, certain people are investigated differently. And we shared that with her. We didn't, ask.
All right, so let's hear from the audience. Do you agree with what he said, that in the South, certain people are investigated differently? Put a 1 if you agree with that. Put a 2 if it's a no. Put a 3 if you've never really thought about it before. Stanley says it's always best to have 2 opinions to arrive at a conclusion. Thank you very much. Just Human says Ben Crump gets 33% greedy lawyers. Okay. Phil James says this is very common for people to give different statements on the same event. Stanley says the family deserves to know the truth. However, it turns out H2O says a whole lot of money is left behind on the floor. Get them, Ben. Just for Nolan, take them to the bank. Okay. Emperor says, say that. Okay. John Stevenson says, subpoena all the kids' phone records. Okay. All right, John. Thank you very much. So we have quite a few 1s, mostly 1s. Okay. So people are in agreement with what Ben Crump has to say about this. Okay. Harlem, New York says, not just the South. Okay, so Harlem, New York, you're here in New York with me. I was in the city today. Do you see all the smoke in the air from Canada, from the wildfires? Tell us about it.
That she understands our perspective, but we said we should mutually try to understand each other's perspectives, where we're coming from. And we agreed that we will try to do that.
Where are we at in the investigation, the autopsy? We were supposed to get it back Friday.
Well, no, we like we said, we're waiting, let the doctors do what they do. They ain't got their autopsy back neither, so we're trying to get it right. And then when we get it, we're going to share it. Yes, ma'am.
On Friday in the press conference, you said that you hear on the video Nolan saying
Yes.
My freaking phone. What are you freaking doing?
That's what a witness told us, and that's what we reported out. Then another witness had come forward and said, no, that was his voice. We have other witnesses who said there were other altercations. So, as Mr. Hurt said, we're trying to go through it all and so forth. And we'll be even more careful to say this is what a witness told us in the future.
And so your team hasn't been able to look fully into that to confirm whether.
So, did you hear what he just said? He says they're going to be more careful. All right, check it out. I want you to listen to what he's saying.
Friday in the press conference, you said that you hear on the video Nolan saying,
Yes.
my freaking phone. What are you freaking doing?
That's what a witness told us, and that's what we reported out. Then another witness had come forward and said, no, that was his voice. We have other witnesses who said there were other altercations. So, as Mr. Hurt said, we're trying to go through it all and so forth. And we'll be even more careful to say this is what a witness told us in the future.
And so your team hasn't been able to look fully into that to confirm whether it was or was not Nolan.
No, we have audio people doing it, but we know certain people said it was him, and then certain people said it was not him.
Are you worried about the death threats and the violent kind of atmosphere on social media and how these fake videos and photos can play into that?
Oh my God, I saw a fake video.
With Nolan's friends getting death threats?
We don't want anybody's life to be in harm's way just because we're trying to get to the truth of what happened to Christine and Elmore's son. We saw fake videos about AI-generated videos of Christine, and it's just god-awful as they're grieving and trying to fight for the truth that they are also having to deal with these fake videos attacking them as they are just trying to literally bury their son next week. But we want everybody to say that we can go through this journey together for the truth. And even though we may have...
You see, it's a shame because so many people are just making up information. The AI has become quite the pain, right? Because they made up videos about the mother. The whole photo that came from the pool party came from a different night. That throws people off. Then they add stories to that saying that, he was burned to death and all these things that are just floating around. It's quite dramatic.
Different viewpoints. We can all agree that everybody wants the truth, and nobody's life should be threatened for seeking the truth. Nobody should be, presumed accountable until we have evidence. His mother and father only want, and Christine has said it multiple times, she only wants what you would want. If this was your son, if this was your daughter, wouldn't you want desperately to get to the truth? Wouldn't you want people who were closest in proximity to what happened to be investigated and thoroughly investigated? We know that, if it was Nolan, how would he be investigated? So, one last question.
Really quickly, just curious about the dynamic that you guys have had, Christine and Elmore, with law enforcement.
Let me ask you guys a question. I'll back it up so we could start that over. Do you think these cases start off about race? Or do you think that once they catch a little wind, people add their race and all the horrific, ugly hate to it? How do you guys feel about that?
So, one last question.
Really quickly, just curious about the dynamic that you guys have had, Christine and Elmore, with law enforcement up until this point. Have you all been able to speak with the sheriff, any of the lead investigators since what happened last week?
So that was actually clarified in today's meeting. The DA's office wanted to take over that communications because they do have a victim advocate, which I appreciate, but of course that wasn't what she, took responsibility and accountability for. But we were not communicated with that information. So for us, like I said before, the last time we actually spoke to someone with the Sheriff's Department was last Tuesday. That was via text message that I initiated, just asking for an update. So that's the biggest thing is, I appreciate that she took accountability for saying, hey, that was actually our doing. But, we have a setup now. And so the hope is that we'll have that open line.
Seems like he comes from a great family, right? That's the impression that I get. All right. Ground and Sky says, please like, share, and sub. Okay. M. Wallen says, I'm from New York City too. Okay. All right. H2O says, it's all about race. Ground and Sky. Okay. M. Wallen says, it's a little bit of both. H2O says, then it becomes about racism, unfortunately. Phil James says, I think people make it more about race than it is. Good point. Kathleen says, I don't think people are racist. Okay. Fox says, it's grandstanding by ignorant people. Gun B, shout out to you. Gun B says, 3 white boys leaving a white boy wouldn't be national news. Okay. Alex says, wow, now we see why Ben Crump is needed. No contact with the family. All right. Stanley says, it's sad commentary how people always find a way to interject their hate into a situation. Good point. John says, racism is always a big story, and racists take it and run with it. It's running and tainting the truth. Okay. Kim, welcome in. First time I think I'm seeing you. Says this family should have hired a good attorney instead of a man that has such a bad reputation. Hope the real truth comes out and there is someone responsible for the death gets punished. That's if. Okay, thank you. Emperor says no, these cases make race an issue. When you see the injustice to the sentence or lack thereof, interest in the accountability, race then becomes a component. Okay, thank you.
Of communication.
So you feel like this was useful
and
today?
Attorney Hertz has a comment on that there.
Let me just say that under the law in Mississippi, a victim is entitled within, I think it's 72 hours to get an incident report and to have certain information shared. It's been more than 72 hours.
How do you guys feel about their legal team so far? You had a chance to hear from pretty much most of them today. Are you impressed?
Hours, and that's part of the meeting here today to start getting the incident report and all that information that we came here to collect, as well as listen to the district attorney and what she had to say.
Did you get that report?
No, not yet. We are working with them to say there need to be better communications with the clients and so forth. So the big things that we know, there's going to be a grand jury into the death of Nolan Wells, and number 2, that we're going to have a mutual inspection of Nolan's cell phone. We just want to make sure everybody else's cell phone is also being downloaded. Thank you.
Really quickly, as far as
Okay, so there you have it, folks. That's the press conference. I cover these cases. Let's see if I can remember half of the cases that I've covered. Trump, he received 34 felonies. Sean Diddy Combs, Harvey Weinstein, the Alexander brothers, Luigi Mangione, his state trial, and also the federal. Nicolas Maduro, L.A. Reid, the list goes on and on, right? We also travel out to Nancy Guthrie's home. Speaking of Nancy Guthrie, this is what I was wanting to hear from her family. More press conferences, and you get a chance to hear them and how they really missed their mother. But we didn't really get a lot of that when it came to her case. I'm not sure why, but it's been pretty silent. But anyway, keeping it to Nolan, right? So Nolan, after covering so many cases, you'll start to realize, like the public, not understanding how the court system works, they think that, it's going to be a lot of there. And the fact that he's mentioning that it's going before a grand jury, sometimes it sets you up for, like something that may not actually materialize, right? Because even if it goes to court, if it comes back that he had alcohol in his system, you're going to see how in court it really goes all the way left, because people are going to say, oh, this is such a big deal. They're going to be proven these people did something to him. And by the time those attorneys get done with showing that the person had alcohol, I'm just saying the court system is more complex than most people who are on Facebook just pushing a narrative could ever understand. In fact, a lot of times the judge may not allow certain information that you think is key to the case to ever see the light of day inside of the courtroom. And anyone that has attended these type of cases, or perhaps you've had a case yourself, you know that it's very complex, just to say the least. Stella says, like, share, and subscribe, and turn on your notifications to be notified for upcoming shows. Has anyone placed him? Is there any witnesses? What witnesses are going to be allowed in court? How many people are actually going to show up? Are they going to say that he actually got back on the boat? When will they say was the last time that they saw him? They're going to get into the alcohol and how many people actually had alcohol. As the witnesses come in, they're going to be asked, were you drinking too, and how old were you? This is just the nature of how it works in court. So that's if it even gets to that level. Right now, we get that impression when the lawyer says, oh, there's going to be a grand jury. Does that mean that is that going to materialize into charges? You know, people that are not versed in the court system might think so, but then they're shocked when things don't always turn out or pan out the way that they're expecting by watching Law and Order and some of those Murder, She Wrote shows on the television, right? People become TV lawyers and experts. But in court, I'm telling you, it's very complicated, and it's not what you would imagine in most cases. We're going to have criminal defense attorney Calvin Johnson break it down for us more about Nolan Wells on Sunday. I believe next Monday we have Candace Kelly. She's going to be on. She's a law professor. She was on last Monday. She did a good job breaking down Nolan Wells and Carmelo Anthony. And again, I've spoken about Carmelo Anthony. I attended his trial. Coming up, I have Chris Brown. I will be attending his trial as well. I have Tyler Robertson. I have Little Dirk. I have quite a few court cases coming up. In September, I will be attending Luigi Mangione's trial here in New York. So I attend court every day. I go in often as media, so it's much easier for me to attend in New York. When I went to Carmelo Anthony's trial in Dallas, I had to attend along with the public. So every day is just a draw, and you just have to take your chances, and you have to get there extremely early in order to attend court. But in New York, I'll be able to go in at a reasonable hour. Let's look at some of the comments before we take off. Everybody has been very amazing today as far as their comments. M. Wallen says, Nancy Guthrie case is so baffling. In fact, guys, if you have any questions, I'll take questions about, with Nolan Wells, I just want to be very clear. I'm not of the opinion either way yet because I have a wait and see attitude. I'm really waiting to see about the autopsies, and because there's 2 autopsies on the way. And also to find out more, but we also continue to research and investigate in our own way in regards to the case. But also, if you have any questions about Carmelo Anthony or any of these cases, now is your time. I have maybe another 30 minutes that I can spare. If you have any questions, this will be a good time. If you would like to come up and ask me a question, I'm going to drop the link right now. And you can actually come up. You could keep your camera off, whatever you like. Here's the opportunity for the next 30 minutes. You have my undivided attention, so come right up. All right. M. Wallen says, Nancy Guthrie case is so baffling, disappointing that the FBI hasn't solved it yet. You know what, M. Wallen? I've been working on the Nancy Guthrie case. I'm back on that case. And let me tell you something. I went out there for 2 weeks. I stood outside of her house for 2 weeks, looking and asking and trying to figure out what could have happened. I'm going to tell you in my own personal opinion, I don't think she ever left the neighborhood. I don't think she was ever put in a vehicle. So that's what I'm working on right now. I think the lady, it was a local person in that neighborhood. And I think the night, I'm going to start back on that case and I'm going to show you some things that I've discovered. But if you go back to the very first night for Nancy Guthrie, when the sheriff was standing out there in the dark in front of her home, he doesn't really stress whether they had the dogs really on the hunt. There are ways for people to hide the scent, but if you look at Nancy Guthrie's case, the blood trail does not go to the end of the sidewalk. If the blood trail went to the end of the sidewalk, I would say they took the camera down and put her in the car. But I could actually show you the information that I put together. The blood trail goes just beyond the porch area, and then the blood trail goes off the side of the stairs or off the sidewalk. So, and if you look in that area, it would be a perfect place to have a staging. So, in other words, you could have a tarp down. Remember when the guy, he comes to her door, he goes back by the bush and then he looks over? It's almost as though he's looking at someone or something, maybe to see if everything is still in place, right? But even in that area, it looks like you could actually get out of her yard by perhaps going between the fences of the two houses. I don't think they came out because of the lighting or it was too obvious, but I don't think it involved a vehicle. That's just my opinion at this moment, because while I was there, one of the neighbors had a camera going to the left and the feds came and got it. So it was very likely to be someone local that, or unless they parked on a different street and just went to the right just to take her behind the house. I don't think they came to a vehicle and drove away. That's just my opinion. All right. Anyway, thank you for that, M. Wallen. Fantastic says they are impressive and touching on all points in contention, at least in the coverage I've seen so far. Okay. Thank you for that. Good point. John says it's not that hard to get alcohol in the South as a teenager. Yeah, it seems like when you look at that island, it seems that it was a place to go hang out and have a good time. And, people bring their own alcohol. And so it's easy to get access. Nowadays, too, people are doing other drugs and everything else. So it's hard to know until you really get the autopsy what's really happening here. Stanley says, Mel, your court trial expertise is beyond reproach. I value your opinion. Yes. I've attended quite the cases so far. I would say the biggest case that I've attended is Nicolas Maduro. Actually, he came into the courtroom. I was one of the people that he spoke to, said Happy New Year. So that was a little interesting to have a former president of Venezuela talk to four of us. He said it 4 times, Happy New Year, looking into the audience. So I will be covering his trial as well. But I think the most impressive trial so far was Donald Trump. And to actually have the president of the United States walk past us every day and, being able to be that close to a sitting president. At the time, he wasn't the president because his trial took place in between. Remember, Joe Biden beat him. And that's when they started with all the, cases. One thing for sure, he had a very unique jury, definitely did not look like Donald Trump supporters. I'll put it that way. All right. So M. Wallen says, is the public allowed into the grand jury proceeding? Typically, no. Country Carpenter, thank you for all your support. M. Wallen says, I must be behind. Didn't even know Chris Brown has a case. Yes, he has a case in September in London. I'll be there covering it. So that's about a 10-hour flight. Okay. Phil James says, no, the public is not allowed into the grand jury proceeding. Thank you, Phil. All right. Thank you. Thank you. John says, if someone gets indicted after grand jury, all hell is going to break loose. I second that emotion. That's going to be a day of reckoning. Ruben says, good afternoon, everyone. Can you please sing? Okay. All right. So that's a little different. M. Wallen says, that's how I met you in front of Nancy's house. Okay. Thank you. You've been with me ever since. That's amazing. I have so much to cover in regards to that case. Still trying to figure out, it's such a mystery of what happened to Nancy Guthrie, and it doesn't appear that they made any advancement on solving her case. So I'm quite intrigued by that. Ground and Sky says, my heart goes out to Nancy's family. So very sad. Right. Definitely. H2O says, Mel, do you think was a panic room? Okay, not sure what that's about. Joshua says a suit with a Yankee tells everything. Okay. All right. Ground and Sky says, okay, he signals someone. Okay. I can see that. Okay. Grateful Heart. Thank you. All right. Ground and Sky says, please like, share, and subscribe. Okay. Thank you very much. M. Wallen says, I know some young people do shrooms. Okay. I know that too. I can only imagine. Ground and Sky says, that must have been something being so close to all of them. Yes, yes. Sean Diddy Combs is actually coming home. And here's the thing about Carmelo Anthony's appeal, and I know it's a different state, but when I went to Sean Diddy Combs' appeal, there's 3 judges that preside over the appeal, and the one that was actually the head judge, the first thing he said off the gate, he says, listen, when it comes to a jury verdict, it's very hard to turn it around. Okay, so we sat there, I would say maybe 3 to 4 hours. But in order to really make this appeal work, in most cases, you have to have a lot of objections during the actual trial to put things on record. Okay, so I will tell you, when it comes to Carmelo Anthony, there was not a lot of objections. So it's going to be a tough battle. Now, I will say the argument that they're making in regards to accessibility to the courtroom, I think that does carry some weight, because there are various cases, murder cases, that have been turned around for the same cause because individuals were not able to get into the courtroom. So do not be shocked if you see that he gets an appeal. And I also think that if he gets a new trial, I think things are going to go much different. But I do think that if he gets a new trial, it probably won't go to trial. They'll probably come up with a plea deal. That's just my guesstimation. I could be wrong, but I think that's where it's heading. And as someone said to me, if the grand jury comes back with charges on the Nolan Wells case, there's going to be an uproar. Believe you me, the day that Carmelo Anthony gets less than 35 years, you're going to see an uproar. And you'll see an uproar like you've never seen an uproar before. Because a lot of people felt like he should have received more time. But I will say, and I don't want to get into this whole spiel about Carmelo Anthony. I did that last night, so I'll spare you all of that. But one thing's for sure, when it comes to his case, the mainstream media did not put out the real truth of the matter. And what that does is sets people up for failure, because people are walking around saying, oh, he only had a light push on the shoulder. You know, the mainstream media, they were not sitting in the courtroom like I was sitting there. They did not hear, and neither have they released the transcripts yet, right? They did not hear the guy Hudson say that Austin hit Carmelo with a football move, a lineman's drill. First time I heard of a lineman's drill. I just have never been a football player. or when Jalen says that, Austin started to pick the guy up. So that's why people become so shocked, when the truth comes out, and on the second time around, the case might not have the same power. See, if you have a solid case, right? Think about it. If the prosecution put on a solid case and won, then there's no need to hide any information. That's just common sense, right? There's no need. You could put the transcripts out right away. Boom. There's no need to seal it. Put it out. We want everybody to know, okay? We're going to block out the kids' names or whatever you find necessary, but you should be able to stand on it. It's the same argument that I made to you guys yesterday. The first witness, or they gave a testimony in Carmelo Anthony's case, was the video expert. He didn't highlight what was under the tent, what was happening, right? That's what the whole case is contingent on. So when the defense says, hey, why didn't you put the light under the tent, show us what everybody's doing? I've taken the time to show everybody where Hunter went and sit down. Then 2 minutes later, Carmelo walks in, sits behind him. I'll show you where Austin sat down at. Okay? They didn't take the time to really do that in the court case. So we had basically 3 days of the prosecution's witnesses. We started on Thursday. I sat on the front row right behind Carmelo Anthony. I saw him sitting in court shaking. I says, I heard in the opening arguments that he had epilepsy, right? He also had some shoulder surgery, I came to understand, or whatever. Not surgery, but an injury. So let me be accurate. Okay. He also was, they talked about the weight difference between the guys and all that. The second day I sat on the back row, and that's when I was able to observe more about what was happening. I saw some individuals in the audience, in the gallery, communicating with the witnesses. You can't do that. You cannot do that in a case, folks. What are we doing, And listen, I'm not one to look at things one-sided. I could probably argue this in both ways, right? But one thing for sure, I attend court, as I told you, here in New York all the time, and other places, New Jersey, so many cases, right? Most of the courtrooms do not allow you to communicate or to make any noise, right? Because everything can affect the overall case, okay? So that's why I pointed out when I was sitting on the back row that day, I'm just breaking down the days. I would look to my left, and about 6 people over was Austin's mother, and she was crying all day. I mean, it was loud. It was very uncomfortable. It was very emotional, right? And what a lot of people don't realize, I counted 3 jurors that were crying. Yeah, they were crying too. When I say crying, I'm talking about active tears and wiping tears. I'm not just saying teary-eyed, okay? So, it was very impressionable, and they were so absorbed in the mother. So that's why I see the wisdom in New York where they say, listen, if you start that, you got to get up out of here. That's no jab at the mother. I'm just giving you guys observation. It's not my job to try to sway you in any direction. I'm just laying out some of the facts of observation. I also saw when they played the 911 call, the mother was really crying a lot. I don't know why they played the full. I counted maybe 6 minutes. And when we got to 3 or 4 minutes and the mother was crying, I'm like, why would you, as the prosecution, this is your jurisdiction right now, why would you keep playing this entire video when the mother is just being tortured, But then when I went back through it, the video offered a lot of valuable information all the way through, so it makes sense. But just sitting in court and hearing the crying and so forth was tough. I looked over to my right. To the right was Carmelo's family, and I even observed some of them were crying, So that was deep for me because I'm like, wow, Even some of his family members were crying. I looked at Carmelo, and his head was down. I could tell it was weighing heavily on him, being the man of the hour, right? So that's something to think about too. Okay. So I'm just going to go through a little bit more here of these questions and see. I see a lot comments came in. Empress says, it's unfortunate as a community of color, we tend to go with the high profile lawyers versus building a team based on skill of nature of the case. We all aren't millionaires, I understand. Okay. Good comment. Stella says, like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notification to be notified for upcoming shows. Thank you, Stella. Ground and Sky says, I sure hope he will get a better deal. I think it's going to happen. Ground and Sky says, no more time. Okay. I have to be realistic, so I'm not one to try to push a narrative about how much time he will receive. I just speak on some of the things that happened in the case that seem to be questionable and it needs to be fixed. My only argument is that if there was two individuals that were actively participating in the fight against him, the jury should have been made aware of that. It did not happen. And as I started to tell you, the video expert did not highlight what happened under the tent. Not even to the extent that I did when I shared the video with you. So think about that. Even the defense, you pay top dollar. Well, in this case, I don't know if it was top dollar, but you pay money and the defense doesn't take the time to highlight what happened under the tent to show what Carmelo was doing and also what the twins were doing. Okay, so it's very important. Phil says, I don't think there will be any rioting, even if Carmelo was free tomorrow. Okay. All right. I think there'll be some disgruntled people indeed. H2O says they won't ride Charlie. They won't ride for Austin either. Okay. All right. Ground and Sky says I never played football. Okay. M. Wallen says there should be no uproar about a young athlete that went to a sandbar for the 4th of July and is no longer with us. Okay, good point. Thank you. D. Cran's in the building. What's up, chat? Happy Wednesday. Okay, Phil says, where was the defense own expert? I think they refrained from calling any experts because of the gentleman's deal. That's the only thing that I could possibly think of, because you would at least call in, listen, if the boy has epilepsy, right, wouldn't you at least call in a expert to say, well, not that epilepsy would cause you to do something, right, either way, but how frail, how fragile a person with epilepsy would be, or the fear of having a head injury and what magnitude that would play, perhaps from his reference point. Having epilepsy, I would, typically when I cover these cases, like I covered the Alexander brothers, and they brought in a specialist that really helped us to understand how people just make up stuff for the trials. So these experts, they help you fill in the gaps. Sometimes you get an expert about drinking alcohol, how it affects you, or being on drugs. With Sean Diddy Combs, there was a lot of drugs floating around. So the expert helps you to understand because, in general, most people don't. Elizabeth, shout out to you. Good to see you. AJ says, only a hole in the heart. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Phil says, was he medically clear to participate in sports? That's a good question. That's a question that should have been answered in the trial. That's a question I walked away with, because if you can actively play football, then that's something that duly noted, right? Ground and Sky says he was just a little guy. He was 5'7", 130 pounds. Austin was 6'1", 220 pounds, according to court. In the video with Hunter and the mother the mother said he was 225 pounds. I would take it that she would know. She probably was still buying his clothes, I would imagine, right? D. Cran says, Stella, hello. Okay, that's different. Okay. H2O says, no death threats made on Tyler Robertson, though. Huh. Okay. Good point. Stella says it was a little bit of everything. We had news at noon at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Thank you for that. Ground and Sky says, please like, share, and subscribe. Okay. M. Wallen says, we went over the Iran war and Nolan case too. That was at lunch. Thank you, guys. All right. 954. Is that Florida? LOL fight. You mean a shove and then a brutal stabbing? Nope, that's misinformation. That's not what we learned in court. I was there. You're speaking on what you heard from the mainstream media, which is slanted and inaccurate. So for the sake of truth, I can confirm to you that it was more than a light shove. All right. Hope that helps you. Emperor says it was a smash and go case. Okay. That's like people smash and go in these stores when they're stealing, right? Okay, that's a conversation between two. Elizabeth says, I feel Carmelo deserves a fair trial. His trial was definitely unfair for him. I feel a lot of witnesses were coerced by the adults what to say. Sorry, but just being honest. Honest indeed. Thank you. I understand your position. Phil says, be careful what you say about wishes for the president. Okay. Emperor says, yes. Where were the experts and the specialists? This really weakened his case. Definitely. But again, I think it was a part of that gentleman's deal. They were afraid to put on a strong case. It's not the case that you would see from a guy that I happen to know like Brian Steele, who is probably a heavy hitter, you know. Also, Mark Agnifilo, Karen Agnifilo, these are amazing people when it comes to being great lawyers. H2O says Americans should be focused on these jihadist sleeper cells rather than some race war fantasy. Okay, all right, I understand. New Jerseyans in the building, good to see you. D. Cran says we're talking about the background. Okay, all right, very good. All right, I think that pretty much wraps it up. I want to thank you guys. If we don't have any more questions, we're going to call it a night because we don't have any other shows coming through tonight. I want to thank you guys for all the participation. It was great to have so many people, a lot of great comments. Right now in our country, we have a lot of cases happening. We're trying to cover the ones that have a lot of attention or a lot of questions surrounding them. So I look forward to covering what I can. The key ingredient is trying to take good notes and cover the case with integrity, because one thing I learned about Carmelo's case is that people have a hard time walking away with facts. So I make it my aim to keep the bar high when it comes to taking notes and being accurate, because I thought that the judge would release the transcripts right away, right? That would have set so many concepts free. A lot of the debates that were happening with that case, if we had the transcripts, we wouldn't have to argue about it, right? But for some reason, the judge sealed this case. I'm not sure why. As you see with the Epstein files, you can easily redact information if you're concerned about the children and their names, right? A lot of them, this was 2 years ago, right? So now they're beyond 18. Most of them are beyond 18. So why not put out the transcripts? Some of the transcripts are coming out now in connection with the appeal, but some of those key days are still locked away under key. And we wonder why. Why is that the case, right? Especially from what I understand that the defense, the new dream team, were told they could look at the file, but I guess they couldn't copy it or walk away and reveal the things that they saw in the file. So there you have it, folks. Just to give you an idea of what happened with that case. That girl Henny is in the building. Shout out to you. She says, I agree they need to release the transcripts. Now, that girl Henny, she always pulls those transcripts. She's more of a transcript type of individual, even for cases that I think she does not attend. She makes sure she gets the transcripts. So that's amazing. All the reading that goes into these files, that tells you a lot about the person. I'm going to drop the link one final time. If someone wants to come up, you can come up at this time. Within the next 5 minutes, we're going to close out. I will attend to anything else that pop up in the meantime. Ground and Sky says, thank you, Mel, for all the hard work. Thank you. Thank you. Last week, this time, I was in Egypt. And sometimes when we were in Luxor, it was 125 degrees. Can you imagine that? 125 degrees. I couldn't even reach back. I wore pants. There was tremendous flies, and I'm not trying to talk. This is not a negative talk. I'm just telling you what we experienced, right? So some days you'd have to wake up in the morning and say, listen, do I want to wear shorts and be cool? Or do I want to wear some pants and keep the flies off me? So fortunately, I was able to wear linen pants. That was the best investment ever because it was so annoying. Like I went to a cookout over last weekend here in New York, and I said, man, I'm looking for the flies to come over and this and that, but and here we don't have that same experience. I'm not sure why. Okay, but the trip, you can go check it out, the trip to Egypt. I have this video I'm going to put out. And unfortunately, I've been doing a lot of lives. I have a lot going on, a lot of good offers on the table. We have a lot happening. But let me tell you about my last night in Egypt really quick. So we went to, where did we go? We were in Cairo. Yeah, Cairo. And so we went to the place called the Bazaar. And so as I was leaving, I'm going to put the video out when I end this live. Would you believe there was a lady, and I don't know how I happened to film this, right? It was the best moment of my trip, I would say. So I had been filming in the tunnel. There was this guy, you're going to check him out in my video, but he's just talking out of his head. He sounds like a figure from a cartoon character. I don't even know which cartoon, maybe The Littles or something, but he's just talking in his voice or whatever. I passed another lady. She's sitting there, elderly lady. When I go out of the tunnel and by the road, I'm filming the road. I don't know why. Maybe because that's all that's there. All of a sudden, somebody screams, and I film this lady. She runs in front of a truck, a big truck, and kneels down on the road in front of the truck and almost got hit. She stopped traffic. I said, wow. Can you imagine I don't know what she was doing. Some people felt like some people thought she had something explosive, right? If that was the case, I would have been doomed because I was right there filming. Others says she has a baby in front of her. I don't think so. But she was able to stop traffic, and she stopped it for at least, you'll see in my video, for at least 2 minutes or so. But I don't know why she did it, but if she was protesting, I'd say that's probably the best protesting I've ever seen in my life. And I've gone to protests here in the city that you can't even imagine. She stopped traffic right in the middle of the road. And I just happened to film this. So let me put this video out for you guys so you could see. This was my last night in Egypt. So I said, wow, this trip was gracious to me to be able to film something like this. I think most people are going to want to see the video because it's something to behold, I must say. Right? Thank you, guys. Let me make sure that there's no new. Yeah, Elizabeth, when you see the video, I'm going to be looking for your comment under the video to see what you think about it. But it's the most exciting. I mean, listen, maybe it was a bad thing, but I was excited to see it because I said, listen, I see people complaining all the time, but if you want to stand on business, as these kids say nowadays, man, she went on her knees and she stopped that truck. Not only that truck, she stopped other trucks that were beside it and behind it. She shut down the road in Cairo, okay? Somebody says Egypt is cursed. What does that mean? What does that mean? Tell us, what does that mean? Okay. Okay. Rich Glam says, I remember the Littles. That's my favorite cartoon. Oh, we're telling our age, right? New Jersey says, hit the thumbs up. Okay. All right. In your way out. Okay. Thank you for the support. Fantastic says, thank you all. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. Very good. I don't see any new questions, so I'm going to call it quits. Oh, M. Wallen says, I like the Flintstones. Okay. Good deal. Yes, indeed. So look out for the video. I'm going to go ahead and release it now so you guys can see what an amazing moment that was. Okay. Elizabeth says she's going to definitely watch it. M. Wallen says, can you link the video or should we just look for the last Egypt video? I'm going to release it now. So it'll be I don't think it's going to be a short. No, it's less than 3 minutes. So it'll be a short. And I filmed it on my cell phone. So it's in the short format. But now listen, since I have you here, I'm going to tell you what to look out for because I have some other videos that I am going to release. I'm going to release, as I told you, I'm creating a different channel that's going to deal with travel. I've already traveled to the Vatican. I did the trip for Rome. That we went to Pompeii. We saw the amazing trip, right? I have video of Venice where there's no cars. It's just all water and boats. So you come out of your house, you're going to see the video. You don't get, you come on your little deck and then you get on a boat. That's the only way around. It's so amazing. It's Venice, but some people there, they call it Venice. Amazing trip. But what's so amazing about that trip, we went to the Vatican, and the Vatican is magnificent, you know? I mean, the amount of statues is mind-boggling, right? We also went to see the statue of David, King David. A lot of Michelangelo's work. We were able to see all of that. So I'm going to have all of that on the channel. I'm going to have all of Egypt on the channel. Think about it. I went over it last weekend. I did a good video I felt on Egypt. But a lot of the concepts in the Bible, you'll find right on the walls of the pyramids and the tombs and the temples, right? So the concept very similar to Adam and Eve. That's right on the temple walls, right? And you'll find that the first two humans were created by God on a clay wheel, right? Made from clay. Doesn't that sound familiar? You'll get to see all of the temples. King Tut, I was able to go in and film King Tut. They have his remains laying there. You see his head and his feet, toes. He's about 5'7", so I went inside his tomb. A lot of people fear going in because they say you get cursed by going in. I went into the tomb of Seti, where you actually see that on the walls they have some people light skinned, and then they have some dark skinned. So that's when I asked the tour guide, why is there a difference of complexion within the temple walls? And I couldn't get a clear answer on that. But if you do your research, you start to realize that I can't say true Egyptians, But you'll see that the history of the Egyptians is quite intriguing. I have to put it that way, right? I don't want to get myself in trouble. So all of that, what about the tree of life in the Bible? The tree of life, that's on the temple walls. So I put the picture out for that. What about Isis and Heru, or Horus, mother and son together? That's at the temple. What about Judgment Day? What about the concept of the devil? All of these concepts, the concept of reincarnation, the concept of everlasting life, all of that was many years before the Bible was even written. So it was amazing because when you look at the hieroglyphs, that was a communication inspired word from God, right? That's what they believe. Well, that's the same concept from the Bible. It's the inspired word of God. So when I walked into the temples and I walked into the pyramids, like I even filmed inside. Number one, I had to basically get on my knees almost just you'll see, to crawl into the pyramids. And when I stood up, you'll see all of the hieroglyphs written in alabaster. And the tour guide took a flashlight, put it up against the wall, and you'll see the walls lit up. Now, check this out. For one of the videos, when I show you inside the pyramid, they have the hieroglyphs on the wall, but then the wall is carved into a statue. So they have double meaning all over the place. I was floored to actually see the Holy Cross all over the place on the pyramid walls. I'm like, wait a minute. We typically associate the cross with the Christ. Now, obviously, that was the Romans' way of execution. Okay, so let's be clear about that. It wasn't something just focused on Jesus or his story. But the fact that the Romans, a lot of the information obviously was taken by the Greeks, and they later passed this on to the Romans. And that's why you see a lot of, we wouldn't call it plagiarism, but there's a lot of things in the Bible that came from Egypt that was many moons before. And a lot of people don't want to confront that fact. Okay. So to actually go there and see it for myself, I was blown away, to say the least. Okay. So my next trip is going to be Greece. I mean, I have a lot of trips coming up. I'm going to London to cover Chris Brown. A lot of trips. I'll be going in about 3 weeks. I'll be going to Turkey again. So, I mean, I travel a lot. But as far as traveling, that's going to be on the new channel. I'll be going to Greece. See, Greece is very important. If you want to do yourself a good favor, go to the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. You'll start to realize that the Greeks basically took a lot of the ideas from the Egyptians. If you notice and I don't want to turn this into a Bible discussion, so I'm just going to be brief. If you notice, Matthew to Revelation is written in Greek. Okay. So the Greek influence, the Greco-Roman time is packed with so much. And on this trip, I learned so much about it. But remember, I'd already went to Rome and I had some high level teaching. We learned about the clock, and they taught us, all about the clock from the reference point of the Romans. Then I went to Egypt and found out that they had, I'm sorry, I said clock. I meant to say calendar. But then I went to Egypt and I learned that no, they cornered the market on the calendar. But that's not what I learned in Rome. So the Romans, their trip, they take a lot of credit for things. But then I go to Egypt and I find out where it really came from. It's kind of mind-boggling, to say the least. So these trips are amazing. The reason I'm going to Greece, though, because like when you go to the Metropolitan Museum, one of the first things you'll see, you'll get a chance to walk through the artifacts of Egypt. And they were communicating with their holy writings. So you might see the owl. You might see all sorts of things, right? So when the Greeks went in to do what they did to the Egyptians, they picked up on a lot of that design and, Isis and Horus and the falcon. And so over the years, they show you through Greece where they started to put these same symbols on their bowls, but they didn't realize it was actually communication. They thought it probably was fluffy designs, right? So in time, the Greeks really took this whole concept of God and they took it to a higher level and they created a whole pantheon of gods. And you know how it goes, Zeus, and I don't have to tell you guys. But then you get to the time frame to where Jesus comes on the scene. And so that's when you start to realize that they had a great hand in a lot of the writings and the concepts that came out of Rome. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get too deep into that. I already covered that. All right, so that's going to be it. So Greece will be the next great trip. It'll all be on the next new channel where we're going to just talk about that. There's another channel. I don't want to get too deep into this, but there's another channel where we're going to talk about Bible scholarship. We're going to have some debates because that's my true passion. So, but that's a acquired taste. That's only a special group of people that want to understand the Bible when you put it up against science and you put it up against history and the hard facts of Egypt, Greece, and Rome, and some of these other features. All right. All right. So thank you guys. Let's see. H2O says you should the Isle of Lesbos. Okay. All right. I'll definitely add that to the equation. I'm going to be out there 14 days, just like I was in Egypt. All right, so we have a few more new comments. I'm going to breeze through really quickly. Oh my goodness. You guys are really going to town here. Okay, so let me try to get through a few of these here. Here we go. All right, let's see here. Sounds interesting. Okay, Bless Up says yes, because they were Jews speaking Greek. Okay, very good. Elizabeth says I look forward to the new channel. All right, if you like to travel, it'll definitely be a good topic. Brian says the Bible wins every time. Guys, look out for the video. I'm going to release it now. I promise you it's going to be exciting, all right? Thank you so much for all the participation today. You guys have really helped this channel to grow, and we have great discussions, and we do so without causing anyone to feel out of place. And usually when we get people coming in that are out of pocket, well, the moderators take care of those type of situations. Matt says, if you want to be a professional liar, just study the European culture. Okay. So the Europeans were liars. Okay. Thank you, Matt, for your comment. Kathleen says, God bless you. Phil says, thanks, Mel, in the chat. I want you guys to know that I appreciate everyone. This is not a channel for color, religion, whatever you want to believe it to the full. All right. This is not about how rich you are, how poor you are. Right. You might disagree with me on Carmelo, the sun, the moon, God. It doesn't really matter to me. I reserve the right to always change my mind. I'm not a closed-minded type of guy. So if you can present some information to me, I'm always going to take a look at it. A lot of people email me, or they even, you notice I respond to all the comments, right? And sometimes I tell people that come in and they say, oh, you're out of your mind. Carmelo was not attacked by two people. I'm like, we're already beyond that. I showed the video. Most of the people on the channel that saw it, they understand the concept that there was more to this than meets the eye. But, people don't come back because they just want to say what they say and keep moving. I respect that to the fullest. But I say that to say we want everybody to feel welcome, despite what you believe. And Emperor says the Holy Cross or the Ankh. All right. The Holy Cross had a meaning too, just like the Ankh. And that's so intriguing too. But anyway, I won't get into that, but thank you for the point. But again, thank you guys. And, believe it or not, a lot of the people that follow this channel are actually retired up in age. And I love it. So that tells me a lot about the information. It's mature and people understand the bigger picture. We cover the news, but we also cover a lot of great topics too. All right. Phil says it's about keeping it respectful. We can disagree and talk about it again tomorrow. Yes, indeed. Bless up. We'll finish with you. You said you are very respectful and you are in order. What a great way to end the show. And bless up. I hope you lock in with the channel. I hope you guys, oh, look at here. Ground and Sky says, listen, I am 62 years of age. That's amazing. I think 60% of the people that tune in to Watching the World are 55 and older. Okay. All right. So that gives you an idea. That's a good sign. Not that we discourage young folk. We encourage all. Bless Up says, thank you for not being mad at what I believe. And I only believe in the word of God in the Bible. Okay, nobody's mad at that. If that's what you believe, I say believe it to the full. All right? Nobody's knocking that. D-Cran, 63. Okay, everybody's giving their age. That's amazing. All right, Barney says I retired in 22. Okay, looking for a place of common sense. Nice to have you here. Purple Flower, I'm 56. Okay, thank you. All right. Mustang is 50. Okay. Emperor says, okay, the calendar was made for confusion. Okay. I actually bought the calendar, the Egyptian calendar. I actually bought a lot of things. So I'll definitely be sharing with everybody that I can, especially I'm going to go back through for everybody that was really following the trip. And I bought back a lot of artifacts so you guys can, I'll be able to send it out to you. We're going to get through all of that. So look out for the video. It's coming out in a few minutes. I hope you enjoy it. But make sure under the video, tell me what you think. I don't know who the lady was. I wish I could. I hope she's okay. But you're going to see her. A lot of people talk. They tell you what they can do. But I saw that woman go out there. She kneeled in front of a big truck and stopped the whole show. Talking about stop the show, right? Okay, let's see. We have Fantasy 56 in September. Kathleen says, I'm old, but I don't look my age. Nice to have you. Brian says, okay, bless up. Okay, Elizabeth says, I wish I was retired, but a few more years before I get that opportunity. 54. Okay, H2O says, the man that was trying to pickpocket you. Yeah, that's right. That happened too. That was, I went there saying, nobody's going to try to pickpocket me. And I was proven wrong. So that was interesting. I had a guy that got really aggressive. So I had to, meet his energy with proportionality. And so once he saw me meet him halfway, he left me alone, So that's great. Fantastic says, I'm old, but I don't act my age. All right. Good night, everybody. Nice to see you guys. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow for news at noon at 12 Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Mustang says, was she the pretty out the other way around? Okay. Was she that pretty? Okay. I didn't get a chance to see that. She was covered. You're going to see everything I saw. It's going to be so amazing. I promise it's going to make your night. Jazzy says, Mel, be throwing hands. Well, I did learn it. So I have to, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Stella says, good night to everyone. Okay. D. Cran says, peace out, Mel. It's better to be peaceable with all men. Okay. We're going to leave on that note. All women. It's better that way. And I would also say it's very important that we teach the next generation and those that listen now to practice some emotional intelligence, because there's always going to be someone ready to ruffle your feathers, okay? So I think it's best if you can walk away. Imagine in this case, if that had happened, two individuals' lives would be much better, okay? All right, two situations would have been better. Jen is 63. All right. Brian says, Mel, I got you over Tyson. I don't know about Tyson. I remember one time in New Jersey, they said Mike Tyson knocked a guy out, and he tried to stand him back up so he could punch him again, right? That's the true passion for knocking somebody out. Ground and Sky says, poll was 46-54. Which way? 54 against for Trump or against Trump? Must have been against because the guy was so upset, okay? Kathleen says, yes, I like Trump. Nothing wrong with that. Thank you for being vocal about it. Yes, indeed. New Jerseyan is in my family, and she knows that I come from a family that likes to put their hands on, well, the older generation like to throw those fists, you know? We're trying to elevate and not operate under those circumstances, but it's in the blood, so we just have to chill out. Okay, D. Cran says, you're so right. We learn with age. Okay. And Ground and Sky says 54, no. Okay, thank you. That's what I kind of figured. H2O says 100 Democrats vote against funding BB. All right, okay. All right, so Brian loves New Jerseyan. D. Cran says, Mel, we are old school. Yeah, it looks like this is an old school channel. H2O says, breaking news. Okay, all right. Have a good night, everyone. I really do appreciate you from the bottom of my heart.
Different voices, but the same song. Building a world where we all belong. Kindness leading the way, breaking the chains. In the symphony of love, the flame remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might. Harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.